You're watching Leafs Morning Take with host Nick Alberga and former NHLer Jay Rosehill. The show starts now.
Hey, what's good, everybody? And away we go for the Friday edition of Leafs Morning Take presented by Betano. It's Nick Alberga and special guest co-host Bruce Boudreau. Bruce, there it is. The only time I'll say it, Bruce. How's it going, Gabby?
I'm doing well today. How are you?
I'm fantastic. Where does this rank, your co-hosting a show with me? Where does this rank in your broadcasting career?
Oh, right up at the top. You know, anytime I can. It's right just beneath Gord, only because Gord is bigger.
Yes. And you mean in stature, right?
Yeah. No, it wasn't really meaning in stature, but you know.
I know. And Gord Stellick, we're referring to my old co-host with the Leafs coverage on Sportsnet 590 The Fan. He'll be on with us on Monday. We're going to do a bit of a roundtable. But Gabby, I love your enthusiasm for the game. As soon as I asked you, the answer was yes. You love talking Maple Leafs hockey. You love talking hockey in general, right?
Unfortunately, that's the only thing I do. And I mean, I've been at it, since I've been 5 years old, and that's how I got the name. And so, or the nickname anyway. So it's just something I love doing. I watched every game, all the games with my wife, and whether it's the Leafs or anybody else. So, I mean, talking about it seems to be the next thing.
And that's fantastic. And it's great to have you on. And I'm happy you mentioned your wife. I think she deserves a shout out for setting this up for you, right?
Well, she is the computer whiz in this family. I can tell you that much.
Well, she killed it. She absolutely killed it. And once again, great to have you on. So it's an interactive show. Throughout the show, Gabby, we'll field some questions. We're live on YouTube right now. I got the Ask Boudreau segment. So we have some Leafs-related questions. If you're in the chat right now and you have a question for Bruce, lay it out in the chat, and I'll filter it. If it's good enough, I will pull Bruce coming up later on there. Ask Boudreau anything segment. We'll talk about the Leafs Bruins game. We'll talk about obviously last night's game. Mitch Marner was fantastic. But off the top, I wanted to get your thoughts on a trade that was consummated last night. Nikita Zadorov going to the Vancouver Canucks. And obviously this drew the ire of Leafs Nation. There was a guy that was connected to the Maple Leafs since he requested a trade, Gabby, about 20 days ago. But what do you think of that fit with Zadorov in Vancouver here?
Well, I think it's a great fit in Vancouver. Quite frankly, and I don't think they gave up all that much. I'm a little surprised. I mean, Zadorov has his faults, but he's a big-bodied guy that likes to play physical. He hits. He's scary when he's out there. You know, he's one of those guys that you say keep your head up when Zadorov's on the ice. So, I mean, I thought it was really a good move by Vancouver, but I was shocked at how little they gave up for him.
So what happens behind the scenes as like a coach? Because obviously like Leafs fans right away are like, my goodness, because that was the perception, Gabby, on social media last night. It's like, that's all they paid to get Nikita Zadorov. But maybe there's this unrealistic expectation or price tag attached to him, because Brad Treliving was the GM of the Calgary Flames, now with the Maple Leafs. But like, what happens behind the scenes? Because obviously there's got to be a lot of due diligence, a lot of conversations to be had, right?
Yeah, I'm sure there are. And I mean, I think especially with Zadorov announcing that he wanted to get traded, and you knew there was more than one team interested in this scenario. And the way and listen, I'm guessing like everybody else as a fan. I mean, I don't have any inside information about this, but I'm wondering now if Calgary didn't want anything back, because they wanted the best thing they did was get rid of, $3.5 million. So maybe that might make them be able to sign the Lindholm or Hanifin, maybe, what they couldn't do before. I don't know. But I mean, or maybe the offers just weren't there. I mean, I think he would have fit really well on the Leaf blue line. But when that doesn't happen and you wonder why, because Brad Treliving had him. Maybe there's something that Brad knows that we don't, or, maybe the price was too high for Toronto there, and Toronto would have had to give up somebody that was making equal money, and Calgary didn't want to take anything back that had equal money. So, I mean, even though some teams might have been able to offer better parts than Vancouver did, Vancouver had the perfect part because they had just gotten rid of a player the day before, and they had that money to spend on their defenseman.
So that's the story here, right? Because I think it came out shortly after the trade. Yeah, the Leafs were involved. And in fact, it sounded like they wanted to get Zadorov and Tanev obviously is still out there. But it was more about retaining salary. And I think that's the biggest part that you brought up there is the fact that Vancouver didn't eat any salary, right? Like it was just money in, money out. And I think that favors any team. And that holds sort of as value in a trade, doesn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. In today's day and age, when everybody's pretty well at the cap or cap strung, I mean, it's very much money in, money out. Now, with them getting rid of Bouvillier the day before and his 4 million, it was like now we're like a kid in a candy store. I can go ahead and spend that 4 million on something that I really need, which is probably in Vancouver's place a defenseman, because they got a lot of young forwards that can do the role. Then Beauvillier had scored 2 goals, and both of them were in a 10-1 win against San Jose. So it wasn't like, I mean, he was burning the ice up with goals. So and then they did a lot of switching of 5th-round picks. I mean, getting a 5th round, moving a 5th round. So I thought it was pretty ingenious, quite frankly, of the way the Vancouver management did this trade.
And that's why they call him Trader Jim, right? I think everywhere you've seen Jim Rutherford work, I mean, I know he's not the GM anymore, but his teams like to make trades. They like to make moves, and that's what we're seeing right now from the Vancouver Canucks. So let's spin it this way. I mentioned Chris Tanev. Even before that trade was consummated, put your head coaching hat on. Was Chris Tanev or somebody else a better fit? Like, did you like the Zadorov fit? I know you alluded to it a bit. You did. But does Chris Tanev in the long run maybe make more sense for this Maple Leafs team?
Well, he's a right-hand shot.
Yeah.
I mean, I think the Leafs can use a right-hand shot. I mean, uh, I remember last year people talking about Calgary with Tanev in the lineup and with Tanev out of the lineup. And I remember talking when he was in Vancouver of they couldn't believe that they had traded him or let him go. I don't know which one it was.
Yeah.
Through free agency, because they thought he was a great defender in Vancouver. So that being said, I think he's probably a valuable asset for somebody to get. I could see how the Leafs would want both of them, because 2 years ago, the Calgary had the number one defensive team in the league, and these guys were playing regular on that team.
And that's exactly, I think, Gabby, the type of player this team needs. Like, a Luke Shen type player, right? Like, you even see there tonight. I think it's incredible. Tanev jumps in front of a puck and he doesn't miss a game. He's got no face shield on. Like, this guy's a throwback, isn't he?
He's a throwback. He's a warrior. He's the kind of guys that you win games with. I mean, he's going to come out and he's not going to score 22 goals for you or whatever. But when he's on the ice and he can play 20 plus minutes, then you're a better team for it. I mean, I've always been a fan. You look at his brother that plays in Seattle and the value of him. He's hurt a lot because he plays so hard. But I mean, you can see where the value is there.
Well, that's a thing, like sustainability too, right? Like, I get it that you want those types of players, but they do get banged up quite a bit, right? Like, I don't even know how different it would be in Toronto, but like I think you have to keep that in mind moving forward. Obviously, as a guy of that ilk, like just playing that game, I just don't know if it's sustainable at least over an 82 game stretch, right? And that's why they call it a war in the playoffs too.
Yeah, I mean, you don't expect those guys to play 82 games, but if you can
True.
get 70 out of them and you can get the playoffs out of them, then you're getting the right thing. But everybody wants them because everybody wants the Warriors. And come playoff time, that's what you need out there is you need the Radek Gudises and such to be able to come in that do all of those things that nobody really likes to do. So I mean, they're very wanted people.
Hey, the thing I noticed too, like this, it's a copycat league. The Vancouver Blue Line, Gabby, every D or their top four are like 6'5" and above. You think they took notice of what Vegas did last year?
Well, I think they did, and I
Oh
know
yeah.
what they had, and they didn't have a very good D before, and they knew that was a major stumbling block if they were going to get better. Because you know what, they've got as good a core four as anybody, including the Leafs. When you look at the numbers of Miller, Pedersen, Besser, and Quinn Hughes right now, and I'll throw in Demko, even though Wall is playing just as good as anybody out there. I thought he was the key the last 2 overtime wins for them, but still hasn't let in an overtime goal or a shootout goal, which is in today's day and age, the Leafs seem to be going to overtime or a shootout almost every night now. It's going to be very important.
Oh, trust me, Gabby. We're going to talk about that at the Leafs Nation 401. If you're watching on YouTube right now, hit that subscribe button, hit that like button, help us out. I got Bruce Boudreau as my co-host today, so help us out. Come on, at the Leafs Nation 401 once again. Leafs Morning Take wherever you find your podcast. Brought to you by DoorDash. It's time for the appetizer. For a limited time, our listeners can get 25% off, up to $10 in value, and 0 delivery fees on their first order of $15 or more when you download the DoorDash app and enter code NATION25. That's code NATION25 in uppercase for 25% off your first order with DoorDash. Offer valid in Canada. Subject to change. Terms apply. Now, Gabby, I know you watched the game last night. I don't know how to feel because on one token, I'm like Mitch Marner with the fishbowl and everything, has the Hattie, scores a shootout winner. But on the other side, I'm like, they blew another lead. They have 5 regulation wins in 21 games. And I probably know how you're going to answer this because you're a head coach.
Well, I mean, the head coach and he says a win's a win's a win. But I mean, I'm like the Leaf fan in me likes the fact that what the record is and likes where they're going, but thinks that we could be doing better. I mean, I think that's the thing. I think the Leafs have won the last few games, and you're going, man, they're winning it by the skin of their teeth. And I think everybody wants the perfect 5-1 win every night, but that just doesn't happen all the time. But I mean, they do have the wherewithal, and I will say this. I mean, when you can win all the close games, that's what you need to be able to do for playoff hockey. And the Leafs have been coming through with that, even though, let's face it, there's going to be no shootouts in playoffs.
Yeah, it's a lot different. But that's my takeaway again is the lapses. Like, I feel like the big boys were really, really on in the first half of the game. And there was a lapse. There was a lull, like where their play really, really dropped off significantly. And I always, use this comparison to like Mariano Rivera. And they need that closing ability, Gabby. I know you're a big baseball guy, and who was the best at doing it, closing a ball game? Like, you knew when he was coming in with that cutter, that slider, it was ball game. It was over. The Yankees are going to win. I don't get that feel. It can be like 5-1 Leafs, and I'm like, crap, they might shit their pants in the third period,
Yeah, I mean, there's no doubt. I think they take their foot off the gas, and I just think that once they start winning and they're getting they start going, okay, let's make sure we're all back. Let's make sure we change our game plan around to be more defensive hockey. Now, last year, I mean, I think they were a top 5 defensive team in the league.
Yep.
And so, I mean, that works. But the problem is playing prevent defense never prevents anything. And I think I don't think their defense with the injuries they have is as good as it was in the past. And so, I mean, it's tough to keep when the puck's in your zone for the last period and a half. Then it's hard to keep the puck out of the net. I mean, it's just goes to show. Like, I mean, in between periods, you're always sitting there when you have a lead. I think I said it every time I've ever had a lead going into the third period is keep your foot on the gas. The biggest thing, we don't want to change the way we play. We want to go for that next goal, but let's make sure that we're responsible. In other words, don't turn pucks over at the blue line. Don't get caught 3 men deep. Do those things, but still go to score. Still try to win. I mean, because when you sit back and you only send 1 man in, then they get the breakout. It's an awful lot easier. And you can see with the Leafs have done that, where they have everybody back in the middle of the ice. And invariably, if they get a good dump in, now the puck's in your zone and they're forechecking.
I'm just trying to figure out why this continues to happen, right? Like, you're so right. And you've said that speech in the second period, I'm sure, a billion times. And I'm sure Sheldon's saying the same thing. But it feels at times like it goes in one ear and goes out the other. Like, what do you attribute that to? Like, it's fascinating to me. It's like one thing to tell somebody to do something. It doesn't mean they're going to do it, right? And then you watch the way they played in the third period, and it's almost like they're letting the Kraken take the play to them, right? And I felt the second period was the same way too, where it's like you have to have sort of that killer instinct. I know it's a buzz phrase, Gabby, used in this market. It just doesn't feel like they have it sometimes. I love the way they start last night.
Yeah, and I mean, and I'm really happy to see Mitch, who I don't know at all, score 3 goals because it was
Yeah.
his first time in 9 games, and I mean, the next one you get is Austin scoring some goals again, and because he's when he decides to score, or not when he decides, he always wants to score, but when he scores, it's in bunches, and so you know that's going to happen. Um, but what you'd really like to see if you were a Leaf fan is you'd like to see all 4 lines going. You'd like to see all 6D going all on the same night. Right now, it looks like you got uh, sometimes the bottom 6 are going, sometimes the top 6 are going. Uh, Morgan Riley 2 nights ago played 30 minutes and he was unbelievable. You like to see that happen on a nightly basis rather than who's going to go tonight. If you're the coach, you're sitting there going, okay, I mean, we're going to go out there and play. Who's going to be the players tonight? Who's not going to be the players? I mean, you'd like to see Max Domi score a goal just to get off the schneid. Maybe he'd start, scoring. Bertuzzi has started a little bit. But I mean, these are the things that you'd like to see on a nightly basis.
We've seen a rather demonstrative Sheldon Keefe the last couple outings. Is this a coach feeling the pressure, or is this sort of something he's playing? Because how often did you go to that well in your career where you just lit a gasket on the bench and just let everybody know what's up?
Well, you don't do it often, but
Yeah,
when you do it, you have to do it with effect. Paul Maurice did it last year in Toronto.
sure.
Sheldon does it. Every coach does it as long as you don't make a habit of it. It's like it would be like to me a parent yelling at their kid every night. And then after a while, if the kid says, do what you want, I'm just, I know it's coming in one ear and out the other. So, I mean, but if you do it and it has that effect, because it's like, whoa, what's he doing? He's usually not coming down on us that hard. You take it into account a lot more, and it usually rings a bell and has an effect on you. And I think that's all Sheldon's doing. He's tired of seeing the mediocre play sometimes, and he's probably trying to talk their way into playing better. And then sometimes you go, okay, I can't take it anymore. This is what's going to happen. And then he goes into a rant.
You had some good battles with Ovi back in the day on the bench.
I had one, and I
Infamous.
didn't win that. I didn't win that battle. I got fired in a week.
Oh
So,
shit.
but I've had
Mitch
battles.
Marner, like watching him last night, Gabby. Is that why coaches or Sheldon specifically, you don't get concerned when Mitch Marner's like in a rut per se, because he was outstanding last night?
He's going to be great. And I
Yeah.
mean, look at Nylander had an unbelievable start, and he's cooled off a little bit. But I mean, he's going to be great and consistently great. Austin's going to be great. Marner's going to be great, and Matthews are going to be great. Those are the 4 right there. Now, if they can throw in a Bertuzzi and they can throw in a Matthew Nyes, and if Domi starts to get to where he used to be when he was a 20-plus goal scorer, now you got 7 forwards that can score. Jarn Krok would be 8. And
Mhm.
then now all of a sudden you've got what we call balance. I mean, and that's what I think the Leafs have been striving for a long time. And the hardest part with that is you're strapped with money because you've signed those guys to such big tickets. So
Yeah, they're sort of stuck with that now, and I'm happy earlier on, Gabby, you brought up Joseph Woll, because I'm always careful with young Leafs goalies, but like watching him last night, the save on Eberle with like 30 seconds left in OT, like you need those big time stops, and I think that's what sets goalies apart from others. I thought Woll was fantastic again last night, 37 saves. If he doesn't play that game, doesn't play that way, there's no way they win that game, and it's a different story today.
yeah, I agree. And I mean, what I've noticed from him, he's a big time goalie. The tougher the situation. Now, the only time it hasn't been like that to me was the last 3 games in the Florida series. But I mean, other than those games, man, he would hold the team in and make the big save in the last 5 minutes that secured the win or secured the ability to get the win. And the Leafs are really good at tying the game up in the end if they get a 6-on-5. But I really believe that this guy is a really good goaltender, and I mean I think he'll be a Leaf for a while.
Do you see him in anybody you've coached in your illustrious career?
Do I see a little bit in him? Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, like
Well,
anybody
he
you've coached.
reminds me. He reminds me of a young Varlamov, a young Gibson, a young Freddie Anderson.
He's got
All
that it
great
factor.
goalies. Yeah, I
Yeah.
mean, all those guys were great goalies. I think this guy, even though name recognition isn't as much as you'd think it would be, I think he's that kind of goalie. From what I've watched of him, very rarely have we seen the real soft goals go in, and he's made a lot of big saves to preserve Leaf victories this year.
I know you say that about name recognition, but I think it's actually a positive that it sounds like this guy's the potential to be like a legitimate starting goalie in this league. Like, you know how difficult it is to be a goalie in general in this league and be sustainable over like a 15-year period. I'm with you. Like, I see everything that leads me to believe like Joseph Wall's still going to be around in like 10 years from now. And I take that as a win considering they drafted this guy.
Yeah, I mean, if you can draft a guy and keep him, I think that's a win-win because it doesn't happen a lot, but that's how your team gets better
Yeah.
all the time is by good drafts. And this guy, he's sort of slipped under the radar a little bit, and he's come up quietly, and I think that's the best way. I mean, I look at the difference, and I'm not saying it's right or wrong at all. I mean, but Levi in Buffalo came with a lot of hype, and then his season hasn't gone as well as he'd like. I'd rather go it the other way, come under the radar, and then all of a sudden just keep building and building and building where there's no pressure on you at all because everybody is waiting for him to fall apart, but it's not happening.
And the thing I think I'm sure you would back is like there's nothing wrong with overplaying a guy in the American Hockey League, right? We're seeing it with UPL in Buffalo right now. He finally got the call. He's ready. I think the important thing to stress too with Joe Wall is like he's mid-20s as opposed to like a Devin Levi who's a bit younger. But there's never anything wrong with like playing a guy too much. Like there's no such thing in the AHL, right?
The American League is a great league. I
Yeah.
mean, man, they can still shoot the puck and as hard. I mean, and actually, there's more scoring chances in the American League than there would be in an NHL game because it's a little more hectic. The players are a little younger for the most part, and there's more mistakes made. So, I mean, we were always really happy in Washington. We had 5 good goalies. Michael Neuwirth
Mhm.
played in the East Coast League the one year. I mean, and if you can, and Jonathan Quick played in the East Coast League one year. So, I mean, when you've got an overflow, I really believe playing is much better than sitting. So, I mean, whatever league, there's good leagues, good shooters, and you got to get that game stuff in to get better. That's how you develop people.
It's such a volatile position though, and I love that I have you on today. Like as a coach, you just bang your head at how many injuries happen in between the pipes where it's like, fuck, I'm going to like my fifth string goalie. Because Gabby, you know this Leafs team specifically, the last 10 years, we'll say, like I was working with Gord that night that David Ayres played. Like anything is possible. And I can't remember a time the position was this volatile in the game.
No, it is because, well, you know what? They're in such better shape and everything else. They move
Mhm.
their hips, I mean, go to in different directions than you ever seen before. Their knees are all, I mean, it's a tough position to play and people get hurt. You really got to worry, I mean, about practice time and you need the practice, but the yeah, they take more shots in practice than they ever do in a game, and so you really got to make sure your timing on these things for the goalies is great, and you have to have a good communication with them through your goalie coach as to whether they need rest or whether they need a lot of shots. And I mean, we had whether I was in Vancouver or Minnesota, I mean, they would tell me whether the players or the goalie, especially if he could use a lot of work or let's make it easy on him a little bit today, and that's how you would have your practices. And so, I mean, we'd build our practices around that.
Much different era as well. Wendy's is letting you win real food with your fantasy teams this year with the Wendy's Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool. Sign up to play the Daily Face-Off Survivor Pool to win weekly prizes like the new chicken strips and French toast sticks from Wendy's and the Wendy's app. Head on over to dailyfaceoffsurvivor.com. That's dailyfaceoffsurvivor.com to play today. So Joseph Wall, as you know, has made 3 consecutive starts, and they keep winning and winning and winning. Should he make a 4th consecutive start at home against Boston on Saturday?
Are they playing today?
Tomorrow.
Okay, well, he can rest today and play tomorrow. When it when it ain't broke, when it's not broke, don't fix it. I
Yeah.
mean, I don't see anything wrong. Um, with him, I mean, if you just look at the numbers between him and Samsonov, I mean, they're so different. I mean, is Boston a team you're trying to catch, or you want to prove to them that you can beat them in the first round potentially? Then yeah, I mean, I would go with Wall.
You got to show your best, right? And the only sort of reason why I bring that up, because I totally agree with you. Are you like, I don't know how you toe the line, obviously, with a tandem or what we think is a tandem. And I think obviously Joseph Wall has the upper hand, but the fact that they don't play till next Thursday, and that would mean it would be like 2 full weeks, assuming that it's Samsonov on Thursday between starts. Does that matter at all? Is that conversation even had behind the scenes?
I'm not worried about that conversation because it's Thursday. I might worry about that conversation on Tuesday when, I mean, I'm sure they're going to have Sunday off and Monday will be light, and then say, okay, we're getting ready. And that's when you have your meeting with the goalie coach. And Wednesday, you're going to be telling them who starts. And I don't know, they probably play Thursday, Saturday, maybe Sunday of next week. So, I mean, it's always good when the goalies know when they're playing so they can prepare themselves for that game. But if I was the coach, I'd be saying, okay, X is going to play Thursday, and I would tell him on Tuesday, and then on say to the other guy, I'd say you're going to play on Saturday, so prepare yourself for that game, and then Sunday we'll make a decision on who's playing.
Fair
If
enough.
there is
Fair
a game
enough.
Sunday,
Yeah.
I don't even know what their schedule is right now.
Yeah, so they play tomorrow at home against Boston, in Ottawa next Thursday, and then home to Nashville on the Saturday. So they got 2 games next week. Plenty of rest time, right?
Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
yeah, there's plenty of rest. Probably players don't like resting that much because they much rather play than they would practice. It's the difference between playing 20 minutes or working hard for 50.
Yeah.
It's a big difference.
Got a couple questions here, Gabby, in the chat at the Leafs Nation 401 here on YouTube. If you're not subscribed, about what you thought of Nylander and Marner flipping in the lineup. Obviously, it brought success last night to a degree. The other night against the Panthers, for some reason, the Panthers just have the Leafs number defensively. Their forecheck has given Toronto fits. I thought it did again the other night. But do you like that flip? Like, do you think it's something long term, or is it just Sheldon trying to get the guys going again?
I mean, it happens. Like, I mean, and I can just go back to my times
Hmm.
when I had, uh, let's say I had Backstrom in at center, and I had Fedorov. Sometimes Nicky and Ovid get sick of each other, and they need just a break from each other. So I would change and put Fedorov, uh, with Ovi, and then put Nick with Semin. And I had in this the same, and it doesn't happen for a long time, maybe 3 games, who knows? But I mean, the same thing in Anaheim when you'd have Getzlaff and Kessler. Sometimes you just move the Perry to one of them and give them a break if they look like they've hit a wall and that things aren't going well, and they'd still be playing with a great center and just giving it another look for a bit. So I think that's all part of coaching, and that's what Sheldon does good.
So not to pat my back, like even on Monday's show, I thought it's a good period. I thought it was a good period to sort of tinker with things, and that's exactly what they did because they had 3 in a row and 4 or 5 on home ice. Does it help when you're on home ice from a matchup standpoint and you want to give different looks to different players?
Depends on you're really making a strong matchup. I mean, there's a lot of games that you sit there and say, "Well, I think this one line really plays well against that line." But there's sometimes where you go, "Let's roll them over because we think we're better than this team, and let them try to chase us all night." And or if you've got a 3-line team instead of a 4-line team, and the other team plays 4 lines, it's really hard to match up. But I mean, the biggest thing is you want your best players on the ice the most. So, I mean, I've seen it where, you know, another coach, whether it was me or somebody else, say, okay, listen, I'll just keep the big line off the ice and let's see what their matchup is. But you're hurting yourself because your best players aren't playing. So it's all these are the things that go on behind the scenes that some of the fans don't know, but coaches are playing chess a lot of times during the course of the game.
Very meticulous, and I don't know about you. I freed up my schedule, Gabby, for Saturday night. I'm looking forward to this game. 6 points separating the two teams in the standings. The Boston Bruins, 15-4-3. If I were to tell you that was going to be their record when they lost Bergeron, they lost Krejci, they lost Hall, like it really has been an impeccable start for them, eh?
It really has. I look at their lineup all the time and I'm going, I don't think they can sustain it. I think they play a great defensive game. I just don't think they're going to be able to have the offense uh, to do what they did last year. I mean, not only Hall, but it's Orloff, it's Krejci, it's Bergeron. I think they lost 8 or 9 players from last year's team, and that's a big gap to to fill. Especially like I look and they got a great defense, led by McAvoy and Lindholm, and the two goalies are outstanding. But I mean, sometimes when they put the daily lineups together, I'm going, man, they've got one really good line, and the rest just got to play perfect hockey for them to win. And I think they didn't play perfect hockey last week, and that's why they lost three in a row.
Is that team like the gold standard? Like, I'd love to get sort of your perspective. You were in the league coaching as early as last year. Like, is that the gold standard when you look around? You see Boston, the way they play, at least defensively, the buy in? Because I mentioned this the first time these two teams played in early November. The Leafs, I feel, can learn a lot from Boston and what they bring to the table.
I mean, I think they can. Boston plays exactly the same way as Vegas, and and it's about defense first all the time. And I think I don't know how many egos there are on either one of those teams, because it's all about, every time you heard Bergeron talk or Chara talk or Marchand talk, it's all about the team. And so I mean, I think they've really got that dug into their psyches on both of those teams right now, and they play such a really good defensive game that they, out of 10 games they're playing 9 of them at the top of their game, and you really have to do something to beat them. You have to get great goaltending, you have to equal their defensive ability, and I mean, they've got the number 1 PK in the league, and it's tough to score on them any way you look at it.
What would your pre-scout look like if you're the Leafs for tomorrow's game against Boston?
Well, I don't know, because I haven't done a lot of the computer
Yeah.
work with them, but I mean, I would venture to guess if we play in their zone and we don't give up odd man rushes, then good things are going to happen. I mean, there's going to be the intricacies of what do we do when we win a face-off in our zone or their zone, and what do they do? And because everybody knows now, after game 23, what the how they play their neutral zone, how they play their O zone, and what they do in the D zone. But I mean, you just got to do that better than them. And I mean, and in every game, no matter how good you are, you're going to get scoring chances. You just got to make sure that you can put yours in and they can't put theirs in.
I don't know about you. I like the way they're deploying Ryan Reeves lately. I felt from the beginning he wasn't a guy that you put in the lineup every night, but I feel in the last couple outings I've actually noticed him. He's made some plays. He scored last week, against Chicago. Like it's great to see. Would Boston be an opponent that maybe you'd filter in a Reeves into that lineup? He didn't play last night, obviously.
Well, I mean, if you want to keep him effective, I mean, you can sit him out, but not too many games in a row. But I agree. I agree with you. I think that he's a guy that's spotted in. He's a specialty type player. When he, when you play against Florida, you're sitting there going, okay, he's a physical guy. We'll use him there. You got to use him for his assets. And so, I mean, like I would think he might play against Ottawa because they're a physical team. But I mean, so if that's the case, do you play him against Boston? I don't know. Are you a better defensive team? Is that line better defensively when he's in or out of the lineup? Those are the questions you have to ask yourself. Is the physicality part going to be necessary to win the game? Is he going to be able to, finish checks on McAvoy and Lindholm and Carlo? Or I mean, who knows if he'd even be on the ice against those guys? But this is the questions the coaches ask, and then they make the decision on that.
It will be fascinating though, because Milan Lucic isn't playing right now, as you know, for the Boston Bruins, and he's probably the comparable to like a Ryan Reeves. So you start to wonder that way, like where the effectiveness would come from. But do you think we undervalue like Ryan Reeves' importance to this team? Not so much on the ice. Like Gabby, at this point, we know what Ryan Reeves can bring, but more so like off the ice. Like you've been in an NHL room countless times before. Do we undervalue the importance of a guy like Ryan Reeves to that locker room?
I mean, I don't know. I think everybody knows his value. I mean, he wouldn't
Yeah,
still be in the league if it was just to be a tough guy. I
true.
mean, he's obviously a very good teammate, and uh, and so I mean, I think that's as much as the reason why he's with the Leafs now and signed for 3 years than it is his playing ability. I mean, that's to me that makes sense, but I wouldn't know that. I mean, I've never been on his team or him on mine, so you just assume that he's still in the league. There's not a lot of 36-year-old guys still in the league that are not great contributors in goals and assists. So I mean, he must be doing something right.
Very true, and you must as well, because you come on this show, you co-host for the first time, and I already made you your own segment with its own sponsor as well. This segment is brought to you by Charm Diamond Centers. Charm Diamond Centers is giving you a chance to win a $5,000 gift card. Become a champion with the propose. How would you propose one knee, the bend, or the snap? Tag at Charm Diamonds on Instagram and a post your story with a video or photo of your propose. Be sure to hashtag the propose to be entered. For more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com. I'm sure you had a very romantic proposal. Do you remember your proposal?
Which one?
What was the most memorable one, Gabby?
My proposal
Yeah.
was to my current wife. I mean, and that's the only one I'm going to remember.
Good answer, Gabby. So pretty much this is how this segment goes. I fielded some questions on social media. People in the chat have some great questions for you as well, but we'll go first to the ones from social media because
Okay,
I
hold on
appreciate.
1 second. I'm going to need 5 seconds to get my drink because I'm getting a little dry talking all
No
this.
problem. No
Give me
problem.
5
Tee that
seconds.
up. I'll tee this up. So Gabby's going to grab his drink. So you guys, if you continue to have these questions, rip them in here on social media. And so thankful to have Gabby Boudreau join us today as a co-host. He'll be back on Monday as well. We're going to have Gord Stellick on the show, a mutual friend of ours, and we're just going to do a Leafs roundtable as Gabby grabs his drink. So pretty simple segment. I got some questions I fielded from social media. We'll start with this one, Gabby. Have you ever been close to being signed in any staff position for the Toronto Maple Leafs? That's from at No Clue Brother on social media.
I mean, I don't know if I've ever been close. I mean, I interviewed with Sheldon actually a few years ago for the assistant coaching job. I didn't think I was going to get it, but and I don't know how close I was to getting it, but I didn't get it. So that's the only interview I've ever done with the Leafs as regarding the Leafs in a coaching situation.
Fair enough. Good to know. Matt Gulliver, my buddy Matt Gulliver, played hockey with him growing up, still buddies. What's the first memory that comes to mind when you think about your time as a Maple Leaf?
Oh man, my first memory is training camp. Look at when I was with the Marlies, we watched everything the Leafs did because we practiced out of the same building all the time, and my memories are meeting the players and being in awe of Daryl and Lanny and Ian and Boria, all of those guys, and then my first training camp with them. I was nervous as all get out. I remember being sent down. I remember my first game up was against the Flyers, and I got an assist that game. Actually, I think I scored, but I think Bob Neely took my goal, but that's okay. But I mean, I remember that game. I remember probably every game I ever played with the Leafs. But I mean, the growing up watching the Leafs, Frank Mahovlich was my favorite player. Then, believe it or not, Jim Dorey was my favorite player because I thought he was so tough. But I mean, I used to listen to every game on the radio when they went out west. It was all Leafs all the time. And I mean, and then I grew up playing from midget Marlies, juvenile Marlies, junior B Marlies. They're called the Waxers, Markham Waxers. But
Yeah.
I mean, everything. My memories about Leafs are all positive for the most part, except for when they sent me down.
Fair enough. I got a wrestling related question for you. Are you happy CM Punk is back in WWE? You knew it was going to last a couple of minutes before I asked you about wrestling, right?
It's a good question. I don't know. I mean, I don't know if I'm going to have to see how it works out because in my mind, anybody that bashes the company so much for 10 years and then is back in the company and you just feel it's all about money. And I mean, I know a few wrestlers, and they're such great people that I hope he's not a guy that comes and disturbs the locker room sort of
Yeah.
thing.
Yeah.
And if he's a good guy like Kevin Owens, I read this morning, if he's a good guy and he comes to work and he's happy at being at work, then he's going to be happy with him.
It's a chemistry thing, right? You can relate it to the NHL world. It's a big time chemistry thing. It's a morale thing. So we'll see what happens. And I won't lie, I was watching on Saturday Survivor Series, and I was beyond stunned. I think it's just so tremendous to see him back in the WWE. As we roll on to some more questions here on the first ever Ask Boudreau segment on Leafs Morning Take from ASKB. What do you think is the root of the problem with this team? Is it defense, toughness, coaching, system? What's been your read, I guess, in the first 21 games here?
With the Leafs,
Yeah,
I just think consistency. It's almost
sure.
sometimes they look like world beaters for 10 minutes that there's nobody can take the puck off of them, and then all of a sudden it says sometimes it looks to me like, and I've had this with my teams and watched it, that we think we're so good we can just throw our jerseys out there and everybody's going to be afraid and not play against us because we're going to go out there and win. But I mean, I think once they're winning being inconsistent, and I'm sure before the season's over they're going to become consistent, and when they pull all of that stuff together, then they'll be a really scary team to play against when everybody's playing.
Another question, what would you do to improve this Leafs decor? I guess put your GM hat on for that.
I mean, I think they need a right-handed D, right-handed puck mover to go alongside Morgan Riley. I mean, Vancouver did it when they went and got Hronek. I think that was a real good move to get him to go with Quinn Hughes. I think the Leafs need something like that, and I don't think it can ever hurt with the offense they've got. I think it would never hurt if they could improve the defensive core a little bit. I mean, and listen, I'm not and they were fifth in the league defensively last year, so I'm not saying they're bad. I think it's just the one. If you're asking me where can they improve, I'm saying that's probably the position for me. Even though I would love to see a little bit more balanced scoring on the third and fourth line, I don't like it, quite frankly, when I see that Mitch Marner has to play 26 or 27 minutes as a forward in a game like he did 2 nights ago. But I mean, if you can get a little more balance, I mean, the coaches would love that. If they could get, their number one line scoring 2 goals a game, then the next line get a goal, and the next line get a goal, and the fourth line get a goal, and not get scored on, I think they would love that.
By the way, I'm just laughing with producer Aaron. ASKB is Ask Boudreau Anything kind of thing. So I messed it up. We don't know who we're asking these questions, but it's people in the chat nevertheless. Somebody writes in, how much will the European travel and long breaks affect this team going forward? Do you subscribe to that whole hangover thing? Because we talked about it over the weekend, those back-to-back losses to Chicago and Pittsburgh after that long trip.
I don't know. I've never done it. I've never been to Europe. I can't picture it being a problem if you come to the rink to play, but it might be a problem. I don't know. I mean, we've gone from Washington and played in LA, and you go the night before, and it's a solid 3-hour difference with a 5 or 6 hour flight. And I've gone from Florida to Vancouver and played, and then you've gone to Colorado and you play in the higher altitude. I mean, and you never use it as an excuse. And I think if we do use it as an excuse, then we're only kidding ourselves, because if you want to play and you come to play, that shouldn't be an issue.
Yeah, fair enough. And it just seems to be a conversation we have a lot on this show with travel. And obviously, Rosie played in the league. So did Carter Hutton. So did Anthony Stewart. We talk about it a lot when the teams come back home from a Western road trip, how the first game back is just always torture and hell. And you can only wonder how that looks, obviously, going from Sweden back to Toronto and North America.
Hold on for 1 second.
Yeah.
The Leafs have the easiest travel outside of any of the New York teams in the league. They should not be bitching one iota. Look at what San Jose and Vancouver and LA and Anaheim. There is travel. Edmonton is travel. But the Leafs, they got nothing to bitch about as far as travel goes. I mean, they may have the odd bad trip, but if you can't suck it up and make that trip happen, then you're in more trouble than you think.
Like, not to date us, but like when you played the game or even 20 years ago, like this wasn't even a conversation, Bruce. Like you just knew every night that teams were going to show up. It didn't matter if they were in fucking Timbuktu the night before. I just, again, we talked about this with goaltending earlier on too. Like I remember the days that Marty Brodeur is playing 65, 70 times a year and nobody's even batting an eye. Now it's like, God forbid a guy plays 45 games in a season. It's like, what are we doing here? You know, things have changed.
A lot of things have changed in the game, I mean, as far as that goes. I mean, it's an ever-changing, evolving game. I mean, who would have thought that analytics would be such a big part of hockey right now, even 5 years ago. I remember when George McPhee first introduced it, and he says, "Do you think this would work?" And I says, this was 13 years ago. And I said, well, I think it's got a place for it, but I still don't want to give away what I see on the ice. And I hope what I see on the ice correlates to what the numbers say. But I mean, I don't want to do it the other way around.
Fair enough. Our friends at Charm Diamonds are bringing the heat. Bruce, you got a commercial to play, so stand with us. But for more information, go to charmdiamondcenters.com.
All right, gang, listen up. It's time to learn the pro pose. Coach?
Bend and snap.
Beautiful form. Nice arm extension. Facial expression. I could use some work. All right, let's see it. The pro pose. What's that guy doing?
I think that's the bend and snap.
That's a whole different deal. Charm, home of the pro pose. Oh!
Love it. Back here on Leafs Morning Take, Nick Alberga, of course, and Bruce Boudreau, my special co-host, will be back on Monday as well. Brought to you by Betano, the 2023 EGR winner for both the Best Sportsbook Operator of the Year and Best In-Play Sports Operator Awards. The game starts now. Not sure if you're a gambling man, but I'm looking forward to Saturday's game against the Boston Bruins. And Bruce, for the love of me, I just would love to see a regulation victory. I think you made a great point earlier on. This is a big game in the standings. It could be like a 4-point swing here, right?
Yeah, I think the Leafs, too, would like to see a regulation victory, and I think they will be really up for this game. And I think they want to prove to the Bruins and to the rest of the East that they're winning by a shootout goal here and a shootout goal there is not an indication of how good they are. I would venture to bet that the Leafs are going to play their best game in a while. And now that Boston is beat, even though it was only San Jose that they beat, they got off that little slide. And I think Boston wants to stay where they are in first place. They like it. They got a lot of pride. So it should make a real good battle between these two.
I'm going to hold you to that. And then again, you're coming back on Monday. So we're going to review that game. Okay.
Sounds good to me.
Gabby, fantastic job today. Have a great weekend. Okay.
I will. You too. And we'll see you Monday. Have a great weekend watching hockey. A lot of it on.
The man, the myth, the legend, Bruce Boudreau, my special co-host, will be back on Monday as well. We're going to have Gord Stella come by and do a little roundtable with us as well as we break down the weekend for the Maple Leafs. Thanks to everybody in the chat at the Leafs Nation 401 on YouTube. Producer Aaron, bang up job as per usual. We'll talk on Monday. Have a great weekend.
Thank you for watching Leafs Morning Take. Hit that subscribe button and never miss a show. And for more, visit theleafsnation.com. THELEAFSNATION.com. If you don't know how to spell the Leafs Nation, you know what I mean? But hey, sometimes you never know.